Well, hello, hello, hello. Um, Good evening. This is good afternoon from my end. Good early evening for you, Dr. Bojang, and in Gambia and in the UK right now. And for our listeners in Asia, I'm sure by now it's late night going into Sunday already. This is your host, Mike Demba, on behalf of GCRPS. And by the way, before anything, if you are listening right now and you've never heard of GCRPS, this organization is a young one already doing a phenomenal job, bringing content like this, bringing education, enlightening our youth and the entire nation and everybody that is connected to GCRPS right now is learning something from this institution. So please, this is the place to subscribe to if you want to get content like this. Today is a very special event. It's a review with Dr. Kebba S. Bojang. Listen, you are in for a treat. As we see there, you guys can go ahead and see exactly who this man is whilst I look at his extensive resume. Dr. S. Bojang. First of all, doctor, what does the S mean? Because I want to say your full name.
Well, usually when it means smiler.
Oh, Sumaila. Oh, okay. I
But
saw a
usually when people ask me, I tell them Sankaranka.
Sankaranka. I've seen Sumaila and Sankaranka somewhere, but we'll talk about that later. Um, as you guys can see, Dr. Keba S. Bojang, this is a man with so many different hats. I'm looking at your extensive CV right now, all the way back to when you were a medical officer. This is over a decade and a half ago. This is like 2010. A senior medical officer, a part-time sitting doctor in every relevant medical institution in the Gambia you've been in. Right now, of recent, your post is you have your you work in the Ministry of Health, leading a very pivotal institution over there, which is your position as the head of the Gambian Ministry of Health National Cancer Control Program. As we can see, not only your experience but what you have done so far, not only as a medical expert, but now having your doctorate. Tell us a little more on top of that. Tell us a little more about yourself. How do you see yourself? Who do you say you are, Dr. Espojan? Tell us.
Well, good evening for those in the Gambia and good morning for you people in the US and maybe good early morning those in Asia.
Yes.
Well, the way I describe myself is like what I call physician scientist. So physician scientists, these are those who actually did medical degree, but then go along to do a doctoral program. So to concentrate on research, clinical research.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's how I describe myself. Like you said, currently my position is the head of the National Cancer Control Program in the
Yes.
Gambia. Yeah, yes.
And you said that very humbly, and that's not the only thing you do. You're also a lecturer. You're a teacher. You're a medical doctor. You're a scientist. Tell us about the teaching side of you.
No, the teaching, I teach at the School of Medicine and Allied
Mhm.
Health Sciences, University of the Gambia as a senior lecturer.
That is excellent. You know what, Doc? I'm going to dive straight into it. All right. Here we are today. With everything we talked about, everybody knows your field, but there's a side of you which is relevant to today's conversation that has not been mentioned yet. We sit here today talking about a book. So if I come to you right now, Doc, and I say, hey, look at your extensive resume. Look at what you do. We know you as a doctor. We know you as a scientist. Here we are talking to you about a book. A book on what? On poetry. If I say to you, stay in your lane, doc, you are not a poet. That's not for you. Concentrate on who you are. What is your response? What will you say to me?
No, the first question I will say, why will you have to say that?
Hmm. And I'll sit there and just like I did, dumbfounded. I say, "Come on, you're a doctor. You're not supposed to be a writer." What would be your response?
No, actually, doctors are actually writers. Okay, the way to say all
Poetry.
the medical,
Mm,
yeah, oh, poetry.
mm,
So the way I explain this to people, if you look at or you know the most famous poets,
mhm,
usually when you talk of poetry, people will think of people who actually in school did, I think, arts, literature, and other things. But that's not what is happening. So even in the Gambia, I think the most prominent poets in the Gambia actually were not art students. For example, when you look at the repeaters, I mean that
mhm.
is Gambia's
Dr.
most famous
Levitas, yes,
poet.
yes, yes.
He was a doctor. And then now, for me, the most famous poet in the Gambia now is Dr. Tijan Senghor. I'm not sure whether you heard about him.
Yes, yes, I have.
Dr.
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Tijan Senghor in the Gambia, sorry, Dr. Tijan Sala. Actually, in the
Mm,
Gambia, is not very famous or not well known, but outside the Gambia, I think is the most well known poet from the Gambia. He was a World Bank executive. I think he
mm.
was an economist. So he never did arts or, yes. So actually, you don't have to be an art student
To be a poet
or to
or
be
a
a
writer.
poet. Yes.
Doc, I
And
expected nothing less.
I
Uh-huh.
think doctors actually usually make good points.
You
Yeah,
know what?
because
As far as your answer goes, I expected nothing less. I mentioned that, expecting something like this, where I feel like you should not allow yourself to be put in a bucket, right? In a box. This is who you are. You're a doctor. Stay in your lane. If you're a doctor, a medical doctor, and you enjoy dancing, become a dancer. Become yeah, you should be free to be expressive, and I expected nothing less, and thank
and,
you
un-
for that answer.
unfortunately, you just stated it right. In the Gambia or this part of the world, they think that like if you're a doctor, people look at you like you should be calm, conservative, but that's not the way it's supposed to be. I mean, doctors are human beings, so they should. If you want to be a singer, you can go and sing. If you want to be a dancer, but when you want to do that in this part of the world, the way the society will look at you, I think we need to break out from that. Like most of the people will tell me, oh, maybe you should have not done medicine. You should have done, I don't know why they have to say that.
and
So,
and and that's exactly why I mentioned it. We should break out of that, because you can't be confined. We will just head straight into why we are sitting here. This
yes,
this book
Maarikeen.
to me is fascinating. Maarikeen. Am I saying it right?
No, when you have to say like in English,
Uh-huh.
pronunciation is correct, Maarikeen, but it's
Maarikeen.
Maarikeen.
Oh, Maarikeen. Oh,
No,
okay.
Maarikeen.
Maarikeen. Got it.
Maarikeen.
Got it. Got it. This
Yes.
book already. What's fascinating about that? Here you are. I'm a Gambian, born and raised. I speak Mandinka. I speak Wolof. I stumbled on even saying Maarikeen because it's a word I've never heard about before, and that's why I wanted to start. This book, is a publication that, from the comfort of my home living here in the US, I was able to go to Amazon and buy it, right? So it's a global publication that anybody has access to. And yet you made the choice, to give it a title that is always the first question. Tell me how you got to name this book Maarikeen.
So, like Maarikeen is what is written, but it's pronounced Maarikeen. It's
Mhm,
a Mandinka word,
mhm,
Maarikeen.
mhm.
So, actually, when you look at the introduction of the book, what it will tell you, this book is a celebration of my heritage from Jambu in Combo.
Yes,
So
yes.
when you go to Combo, most of these old settlements, they all have their what we call Jindirao in Mandinka, like
Mhm.
traditional names. So, for example, maybe you heard of Gunjur Dabana.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Not the second
So,
part. Gunjur what?
Daba Nani. Okay, you've
I've
never heard of that.
never heard. Yeah.
What of Sukuta Dembadu?
No, I've never heard.
Okay. So what of Kafuta Jarisu?
I've heard Kafuta, I've heard Gunjur, but I've not heard the nicknames that come
Or
after
the
that.
traditional,
The
so
traditional names.
Jambur, where I am from, is called Jambur Maarikeen.
Interesting.
So
I
this is
know
the
Jambur, but I've never heard the Maarikeen part. Yes,
yeah. So this is the traditional name for Jambur. Or in
got it.
Mandinka, what they say as Jindiram. Like Brikama, you have Brikama Bombil Bombada. Wow.
Interesting.
Busumbala is called Jata Sansang. Jata,
That
you
is
know, Busumbala belongs to the Jatas, so that's why it's
oh,
called
okay.
Jata Sansang.
Just okay,
Yes.
okay, okay. That is fascinating. I've never heard, and I'm sure a lot of people are listening right now that are learning from this because there's familiarity in where these places are, but not
Yes.
the traditional name, yeah, or heritage. Okay,
Sure,
okay.
sure.
So that's where the name came from, and that's how you decided, as a tribute to where you're from, you named this book that.
Actually, what inspired this name, it was after reading Dr. Landry Peters' Kachikali.
Yes,
So,
yes,
yes,
I've
I
seen that book.
was
Yeah.
going to name the book when I put on my thinking cap. That was the original title. But then when I read Kachi Kali actually is representative of Bakau. So
Yes.
I'm like, okay, maybe I should come up with something that actually is representative where I am from.
Got it.
So yeah,
Got it.
but before that, I wrote a poem called Jambur Maarikeen, which is
Hmm.
actually in the book.
Yes.
That is in Mandinka. So that's how. So that poem is about the history of the name Jambur and how Maarikeen came about.
That makes sense.
That's how.
That,
Yes,
that
that's how
makes
I came
sense.
up with the name.
That makes sense. Doc, let me something that I found fascinating because I've not heard of the definition of poetry like this is how you define it in the book. So let me quickly go through that, right? You say here that poetry is the expression of maximum meaning with minimum of words, right? It is a way of communicating one's true deeper feelings about an issue, which is best expressed easily, flawlessly, and genuinely in the very midst of these feelings, and serves as a cathartic release of their underlying emotions. The
Yes.
definition of poetry. Going back to that very first sentence, poetry is the expression of maximum meaning with a minimum of words. So less words, but maximize the meaning. I find that fascinating.
Yes. So is the expression of maximum of meaning with a minimum of words. So we all know traditionally when you look at poems, usually longitudinal, they are usually
Yes,
short.
yes,
So actually what you are trying to do, you have a lot of things to say, but you have to compress them in this short
yes.
form of writing. And in doing that, you don't have to lose. How do I say what you actually want to say.
Hmm.
So that's why to be a poem, number one, you need to read. You
Hmm.
have to be reading to know your vocabulary should be good. So this is like summary.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but you have to be very good at it. And what is so nice about poetry is it doesn't. I wrote a poem before the I think presidential elections.
Hmm.
The title was, and I think I said, campaign is campaign is poetry, governance is prose.
Uh-huh.
So what I was trying to say there is
Uh-huh.
yes. So poetry is not actually there is no much restriction as to when it comes to prose, where you have to follow the rules of grammar
Yes, yes,
and everything.
yes.
So in poetry,
There's
there
no
is no.
control. Yes.
No. So if you want freedom, if you are liberal, you are radical, poetry is where you are supposed to be.
I see. I see.
Because you don't have to obey the grammatical
Yes.
rules.
There's nothing to obey. Everything is
No.
accepted. It's like art. I put it there, you interpret it how you see it.
Yeah,
That is
exactly.
that is great. That is great. Doc, so is it fair to say, just from that definition, is it fair to say at the end of this book review, right? If we touch on all the like points, I'll call them main points that I picked, so they're not main points, for everybody. Is it
Yes.
fair to say we will get to know Dr. Bojang, how you think? is it fair to say we will reveal what is behind that curtain as far as like your thinking, or was everything that you wrote here and published just a snapshot in time, like where who you are right now, you've evolved and this book doesn't define how you think?
No, actually, it does. It does. So
Right.
this book, like when you read the definition of poetry,
Hmm.
you talked about expression of your inner feelings and emotion. That's what poetry basically is. It's your inner feelings, your emotions. That's what actually you write. Poetry
Yes.
can be, yes, poetry actually is healing. So the cathartic thing you read there, that's about, you have, sometimes what happens, you have these feelings, stress and everything. So if you can put them down,
Yes.
poetry is a way of, overcoming maybe your fears, your
I hear you.
expectations,
Right.
frustrations and everything. So this book actually, like when you read the summaries
Yes.
about my feelings in relation to my
In the moment.
environment,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
exactly, and my expectations of the future. So
Got it.
this relates to my social, my professional, political, religious relation. How I think about it, how I was at certain point in time,
Yes.
how I am now, and what I also think in the future.
And here's what you did. You just mentioned it, right? You make this. I commend you. I commend you for making this book very easy to read, right? It's easy to go through. You divided it into 8 chapters, each chapter
Yes,
following a theme. What I plan to do is follow that structure. I'm gonna follow that structure, and I'm gonna start with where that chapter 1 about society, which holds the largest collection of about what 35 poems or so, you know,
yes,
um, and here's where I'm gonna start. The first poem that I picked from that is relevant to what we just mentioned here. When I put on my thinking cap.
exactly.
When I put on my thinking cap, my mind starts running like a tap. Ideas flow in like a breeze at the sea, with
Mhm.
which I would begin to see. I would think not like the mortals, though I am not of the immortals. My mind gets into a frenzy, like a riot getting crazy.
Really
I will
crazy.
get excited, as I wouldn't be distracted. I would think intelligently to talk intellectually, with no clouding or reasoning, and all the time for objectivity. I would think without limitation, see without looking, hear without listening, feel without touching, connect without hinging, and then, with the clearest of perception, I would write, relay, to communicate, to convey, to transmit, to share, as I think, see, hear, feel, understand when I put on my thinking cap.
Exactly. That's what this book is about. What this is just a summary of the book. What I did exactly. So that's why I was going to title it when I put on my thinking cap.
That's why
So
that's why I started there. So
yes,
so every time you put on your thinking cap, obviously you've never written without thinking. So this is actually what the process is for you.
exactly.
I find it fascinating.
And then sometimes what happens is when like we always say, nobody writes his or her best poem on the first go. It doesn't usually happen. So usually you talk to people, especially medical people, why can't you write a poem? They're like, oh no, I don't think I can. But I'm like, just write whatever comes to
Yeah,
you, so
whatever.
you
Yeah,
can
whatever
really
you
write.
feel at the moment. And
Exactly.
that leads me to the. Go ahead.
And that's the best time. Like the summary here, when your feelings, your inner feelings, when you are feeling them, when you are in the moment, that's the time you can write the best thing. Because there's no inhibition, nothing. The way it comes, that's how you write. So, but then you can put it aside, go over it several times, and then you polish it, and it comes out good or fresh or polished. Yes.
And actually that leads me to ask, when will you say you put on that thinking cap the most? Is there a time, like, out of, in your life, do you feel like there's a certain time when this happens to you the most?
No.
No. So it's just random.
Yeah,
It's a moment in time. It could be any time.
yes, exactly. Like one of the poems that is called "Words Are My Toys." So I was chatting with a colleague, and then he started using big words on me to bamboozle me, and I'm like, oh, words are my toys. Don't go there. Playing with them is my hobby. So that's how that kind of motivational inspiration comes.
I
So
hear
it can come anytime. If I'm at work, if I'm in bed, I'm watching
can be
sport,
got it.
and
And so I'm not going to put you in the position like still on that chapter one society, right?
yes.
I'm not going to put you in the position to pick your favorite. It's like telling a man to pick their favorite child. I won't do that. But is there one that I want to hear you read one to me that you feel right now is relevant to our conversation from the first chapter?
Well,
Go for it.
in
These are
in
your kids. You can pick anyone.
no. In chapter one, for me, like when you ask me which is my favorite poem,
Uh-huh.
I think that is going to be "The Old Were Once Young."
Go for it, please.
Yeah, this is on page 22. The old were once young.
Go for it. Yes, go for it. Read that for us, please.
Okay, the old were once young. This is a poem for the young and of time and its imprint, the passing of sands of time. The old were not born aged, they too were once young, full of zest for life, blossoming and in their primes. They had their moments they wanted to live forever, but life is a journey traveled in time through seasons and generations, each defined by its own distinctiveness. Every generation has its calling. The old have answered to theirs. Every generation has its fashion trend. The old have paraded and showcased theirs. Every generation has its music. The old have sung and danced to theirs. Every generation has its cuisine. The old have relished and favored theirs. Every generation has its swagger. The old have pranced and strutted theirs. Exuberances of good old days, days of yore they'll forever long for. But time is a great leveler and makes the strongest weak, the bravest timid, the fiercest calm, the loudest quiet, the skillful clumsy, the fastest slow. They may be out of touch for you, the
Hmm.
old, but they are in harmony with time. And just like them, you too shall be old, for that is the natural order. Yes.
Uh, Doc, I think that poem is clear as day. It's clear as day. I would leave it. I wouldn't even have make you interpret this. I will leave it to the listeners as they heard that to go with whatever they feel in that very moment. But it's a perfect segue to where I want to go to. I want to take us straight to chapter the second chapter. And Doc, there's two poems that I want to talk about here.
Yes.
Right? I'll read them to you without warning.
Okay.
From the womb to the tomb,
Wow.
from the living to the dying is the journey we are all on. From the womb to the tomb, it is a journey uncanny. In decades, it is traveled by many. For some, it ends at its beginning. From the womb to the tomb, it is a journey scary. It is traveled back in time with death as a destination. From the womb to the tomb is a journey precious, a journey man would want to travel longest. An attempt to prolong it may fast forward it. From the womb to the tomb is the most direct journey of all. It is a journey, a one-way journey with no delays or transits. Before I even have you comment on that, I'll go straight to this. Death.
Whoa.
Life is work, death is fun, but death doesn't exist. It is a strange of life. Death is transition. a stage of transformation, a metamorphosis of the soul. Death is not an end point, it is both beginning and an ending, a way of attaining immortality. Death is not a lived experience, it is a phenomenon imagined. It feels still a mystery. Death is not feared, it is fate internalized. The worry is in its when and how. That is a reminder, a lesson always to learn from, a stage of life that must come to pass. These two poems, allow me, I had to go a little dark there.
Yeah.
Why is the end of life a topic worth, this level of attention? Because from that poem that you read, old age, to now these two poems that talk about death, it's no fear for you to go there. Why?
No, I think what I'm trying to do here is first, we don't fear death,
Mhm.
actually. So, because like I say, it's a reality that we actually accept. The fact that you live, you'll die. Every living being accept that. But what we are worried about is when and how and maybe the time. If we can know that, we are good because we know we'll die. And like when I say that life is work, that is fun. So
Mhm.
what I'm trying to say here, for you to live, the easiest thing to do in life is to die. To die is easy. For example, as a medical doctor, now when you see some patient, you know the struggle they'll do to stay alive.
Mhm.
But for example, if they are short of oxygen, you see how they'll struggle to make sure to have that. That's the
Yes.
work they are doing to live. But when they don't do that, you die. So that's why that is fun. What is fun? You sit and don't do anything. So for you to live, you must work. If you want to die, it's easy. Just sit and don't eat, don't do anything, you die. So
Basically,
and the only
it
thing,
takes life away from you when you do that.
yeah, exactly. So and what like I said, death is not feared. Yes. So and well as believers, we also think that death is a transition.
I hear
You
you.
know,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So that's why I say metamorphosis of the soul, because we believe you are what your soul is.
Right.
So so your soul will metamorphosize to the hereafter. So you will continue to be who you are in the hereafter, but
Yes.
maybe not in this medium as you are now.
Hmm.
So in that situation, it's a transition from this world to the other
To the
one.
next one. Perfect, Doc. Actually, I jumped ahead of myself. I thought I was reading that from the second point, from second chapter, but that was still society. That was still that very first
Yes, yes,
chapter, because the second chapter is where you went to eulogy and appreciation, and I
exactly.
find that that chapter fascinating, shorter but fascinating. So what you just mentioned is a perfect segue to the next poem that I want to talk, I want to read out from that second chapter. Right, my father
Yes,
is the poem.
yes, my
My
father.
father. My father was of Kombo, of Jambur, a Sankaranko, a giant, an arbiter, a politician, a constituency chairman, a manager, a teacher, adult literacy classes, a religious event organizer, upright, pious, strict, uh, truthful, a disciplinarian. He died young. So this ended tragic. From what I read, your dad passed away. You were age 6, in the sixth grade. Let's
Yes,
talk about him, the late Sumela Kala Bojang. That's your dad.
yes, yes.
How do you have, this like you have this clear, vivid image of a man that you lost that young because you were in the sixth grade. So tell us more about him.
Well, like I said here, this is actually just the description. This is saying a maximum of meaning with a minimum of word about my
Mm-hmm.
dad.
Mm-hmm.
Of
Mm-hmm.
course, like
Mm-hmm.
from Combo is a Sankaranko is a giant. Of course, he was a politician, even though we were young. But then in Combo South, he was the constituency chairman of PPP. So that's the political
Mm-hmm.
and then in Jambur we had this adult literacy class.
Mm-hmm.
This adult, so he actually was. eventually he became the manager of that one.
Mm.
So when I say he's an arbiter, pious, he was truthful. Back in the day in Combo South, he was one of the people that was well known for speaking the truth. Doesn't matter what. So when there was a issue in Combo, he was part of the people they'll call to arbiter in that
I
situation.
see. I see.
Yes.
I see. I
So
see.
yeah.
Well, this is a again is a whole example of just so short, but the depth of it in using just words to describe somebody that for those of us that don't know him, you formed an image, somebody that we were able to pinpoint, and that's just excellent work.
Yes,
You know,
about this point, what I said, this is in a form of like a candle, like a candle stand. So
the
it's like
image. Yeah, you're right. I missed that. Hmm.
yes, yes. So it's like this is him handing over like the baton to us to continue where he stopped. So this
Excellent.
is the shape of that.
I see it.
Yes.
I see it. I see
So
it.
this is what this is a part of a shape poem because there are some poems. What is more important about it is their shape. For example, I know we read there when you go to religion and spirituality, religious hypocrites. When you look at the shape, it is the shape of a minaret.
I've seen
Yes,
it. I've seen it.
like the dome of the mosque. Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
But thank you for that tribute to your dad. In that very same chapter where you have the appreciation part, I think it's worth mentioning because all of us, every single one of us, whether you've had a formal education or not, you have a teacher you don't forget. So that's why I think it's important that we mention this. So in this chapter where I call it the gratitude chapter, where you're giving appreciation for just things in your life. You have one here that is interesting, and Mr. Quentin Cummings. You said he's the teacher to always remember. Mr. Cummings, I will always remember. For a good teacher, you ever remain. Your teachings I shall never forget, for your methods were the foremost. The way you teach inspires me, so for the world was aspired. Though you are famous, in exams you don't favor, you give what is deserved, for really you are reserved. In English language, you got flexibility. To pass the subject, we acquired the ability. You are an epitome of the teacher, so we receive the best of teachings of Gambia Senior when we reminisce your sessions we really missed. Who was this teacher to you?
Mr. Cummings, the famous Mr. Cummings of Gambia Senior Secondary School. He was our English teacher. So the inspiration for this poem,
Mhm.
like I once explained, there was a calendar in my room
Mhm.
from Milan. So on that calendar, I think the title is Everybody Remembers a Good Teacher.
Mhm.
So when I saw that, I'm like, whoa, this is Mr. Cummings. So for me, he was the best English teacher. Like I said, my story with English language. Uh, when I went to Gambia Senior Secondary School,
Mhm. Mhm.
from middle school, like I said, in middle school I did 8 subjects. So in all those 8 subjects, I got one in all of them except English. So
Mm.
yeah, even French, I did French in middle school. I got one, but English, the mark was not good at all. So when
And for,
I
for and for those that don't know what you mean by you got a one, that's the highest grade level you'll get in a subject. Yeah. Mhm.
yes, yes. So when I went to Gambia Senior Secondary School, English was not my thing. I was not paying much attention to it. Cummings was so good at teaching.
Mhm.
He inspires you. He'll make you to like English. So it is from that, and he was very strict. I mean, in the way he marks, and so from him being my teacher, I started bringing interest in English. So I think that's the gateway for me to all these writings and whether poetry or essays and some of the writings I do. So that's why I will always remember him because of him. I'm an atheist, I'm a poet, because it starts from there. So I'll always be grateful to him.
Thank you for showing. I feel like giving gratitude and showing appreciation is just a must for all of us. Doc, I will go straight to that third chapter. Yeah, I'm excited about this just because I'm nosy like that. This is where
Okay.
we're talking about love and relationship. I will read a poem that I picked, and you listen and wait for my correction.
Okay.
Dear love, for you, every day I am grateful because with you as a partner, all I need is in you. It is this serenity of your eyes, in the grace of your steps, in the elegance of your style. It is in the gentility of your disposition, in the sincerity of your connection, in the sense of serenity around your person, and in the magnitude of your ambition to excel. Your smile melts my heart. Your beauty is the reflection of your soul. In times of challenges, you are my rock. In the arena of my life, you are my number one fan. You are the beauty in my eyes, the plum blossom in the garden of my heart, the sustenance of my soul, the embellishment of my life. You are my peace of mind. With you, I have arrived on my journey to find a soul mate. For you are not just my completion, but the making of me. Dr. Bojang, who is this?
Wow. Wow. I hope some of my close friends are not watching this. And do I have to, must I have to answer that
Who
question?
is this, Dr. Bojang? You signed up for this.
No, maybe who I thought this person was, I found out she was not.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm not going to hold you to this. But at that very moment, you express how you felt when you were writing this. And it's
100%.
beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. And just what that's what I wanted to say about
Yeah,
that point.
it came out in the moment of the feeling and the emotions. And
It's
that's
beautiful.
what poetry basically is about.
I hear you. It's beautiful. But let's go straight to chapter 4 then. I'm not gonna keep you around the love and relationship, but I will encourage just people as they get the book, as they read. There's fascinating poems that are there that I love a lot. Chapter 4, I love that you went back to your native tongue and you wrote in it, which a lot of people don't do, because when you're formally educated, we don't come from a country where, we come from languages that are written and read. You have to write it in English, which is not easy. And so, I want to take on you. Pick a poem from these Mandinka poems that you wrote and read it out to us, please.
Well, a poem. I will really like to read about Jambu Maarikeen because that's the title of the book. But maybe I can. Okay,
Yes.
then let me first read. What I'll choose is Kumo. Kumo is like word. That is on page 106.
Yes.
Like I say, Kumo Kalamo. Okay, here I go. Kumo iko abikadom akamoile. Woto nin kumo be fola. Salla moy nin hakilola. Kana la moy nin jusola. Iko be no yedi kumay. Bari be fo mandi kumay. Ho nya kuma be kuma. Kuma manke kuma jawti. Kumo la bete ya balia. Kumo la nyinya balia. Kumo la tinya ya. Wotuta mintu wolong. A fo lumo, a fo la, a fo wato, a fo nya. Woto, kumala na dato, wo manyan na kila la foriti. Katun, kuma wo kuma. Fo lunde bala, fo wati le bala, fo la le bala, fo nya le bala. Kumo, sinkilimo man fanande, iko, a manke kumati. Woto, kuma be kumato ninga moy, hakil tuo, nyanta jele. Kumo ni siriŋo le fanaŋ niŋ ye a bula a ka a baa le waliŋ woto mbe miŋ fo la n se a loŋ mbe a fo la miŋ ye n se a loŋ kaatu tuloo te baakoo ñaa wo ñaa a ka baakoo kumoo moyi le i ko ni bulo ye dum ida se bondi ni singo ye dum ida se bondi war ni da ye dum kalabu wote kola kumo ne dingo wala kalo woto isafu wanyama yake anyama kumo iko abika dom akamoyle.
Kumo, in this sense, is it words?
Yeah, it's words.
Words, not voice. So
Yeah.
words. Okay.
Yes.
The beauty in that, for all that understand Mandinka, I like how you wrote that. My level of understanding in Mandinka is where anything you read or say in Mandinka, I'll understand it. But if you gave me that to read, I'll stumble all over. That's why I handed that to you. Thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned something that I would love, that tribute you've given not only to the book but to your heritage and where you're from, how much it means to you. So it will only
Yeah.
be, it will be right for us right now to just go, and you go ahead and just read about Jambul, please.
Yes, Jambu Maarikeen.
Yes.
So this is where the name Maarikeen came from.
Mm-hmm.
Kabo Sankarani Bama Fongo Tilibo. Kana yela jamburo mutadamin tiliji. Wale atine kaye jambur. Jambur mutata keni kurole kono. Wale atina ikaye jambur Maarikeen. Kombo bata kunjulu sate. Kombo sinkir sabo sate. Kombo mansa kononto ya sansandin bolomba. Nala bulunda man kuma. Nala junjungo man moy. Kombote mala sako isita. Bojang sankaran kol nim bojang jarol ya. Karabaning karanding. Kabila war. Konton killing, kan killing, ada killing. Kombo badin bung chosan dinkira. Fankalia ninken bunano sate. Dembasin killing tamanya kononto. Dembasin kolin sina sate. Sumaila kala bojang ani lalo bojang la sate.
Mm.
Lamin jar bojang ani idrisa bojang la sate. Alasan tuti bojang ani malanding bojang ya. Kebba juju bojang ani marafam bojang la sate. Lamin sali bojang ani jibril sali bojang la sate. Abdullah Kitim ya. Jambur Maarikeen Sansanding Olomba. So this poem basically is about the history of
Yes.
Jambu.
Yes.
Like I said, Kabiri Modi Sankarani Bala Tilibo. So where our people came from,
Yes.
I think that is currently around Mali or Guinea
Mm-hmm.
Conakry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a river called Sankarani. So some people are even saying Bojang Sankaranka actually came from that. So the names of the people I mentioned when we are
Mm-hmm.
growing up, these are the prominent people in Jammu in terms of politics, social, and
Mm-hmm.
other things.
Mm-hmm.
So all I'm doing is paying tribute to them. I
Yes.
think all the names I mentioned, all of them actually have passed on except two. So
Wow. Wow.
that's why
Wow.
we. So anyone who read this from Jambu, you may not know these people, but maybe you'll ask who were these people. So we
and
still.
and that's what I like about that, because this is why writing is important. Where a young person right now who is from Jambur or around there or is interested can read this right now, and actually it's a starting point for them to ask the question and get to know.
Like one of the names I mentioned there, Lamin Jar Boja. Lamin Jar was one of the people who was killed on April 10 and 11. But he's all known as Lamin A Boja. But in
Mm,
Jambu, we call him Lamin Jar Boja. Yeah. So even the footnote I put there in the book.
I did see
One of
that.
the,
I did see that.
yes.
Perfect segue to you mentioning April 10th. I'm going to combine this chapter 5, which is on politics and governance, and
Yes.
I'm going to combine that with chapter 7. So chapter 5 and chapter 7. So politics and governance. I feel like you were very expressive in this chapter. I felt you're concerned at times. I felt your frustration in some of your poems in chapter 5. You had a clear take on military governance. You highlighted some of the events I deem national tragedies, like you named April 10th. You didn't hold back in any political figures nationally, Heck, you even mentioned our here in the US, our 45. So you didn't hold back on how you feel politically, right? And what I want to ask there is, isn't this a conversation, like the conversation of politics? Isn't it a taboo to you? Is it something you feel free to express yourself?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. Yes, actually, I used to speak the way I felt at that time. Because I remember one of the poems there, I think is called A Nation of Charlatans.
Yes.
So this poem was written in 2014. So it was published on the Standard newspaper. So I remember I was in my ward at Carnifing General Hospital when the newspaper was brought to me. So the nurse in charge started, he picked the newspaper and started. So after some days, he told me, Dr. Boja, when I was reading that poem, I was, trembling, I was shaking. I thought that you are going to be arrested because at that time. So, actually, I don't know why at that time, I don't know why I was not as fearful as I was supposed to be. So, knowing what I know now, I would not have maybe written some of the words. I have been very careful. For example, the poem there, the nation hijacked.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So
So this poem was being read on West Africa Democratic Radio.
I saw that in Senegal.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, when you look at some of the verses, they are well, but
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
published and nothing happened, and here we are.
I'm glad you're here and we're talking. And this is why, so I think it's an incredible chapter. Like my personal recommendations actually in that chapter, for people, go get this book and read, please, is Military Government, a Nation Hijacked, and Democracy. So the bonus there, as far as my recommendation goes, is a political
But
mistake.
that's a point there, which is when I say the country is gone, the
Yes.
country. So
Yes.
this was written in 2018 July, and this was foretelling what actually prevails now.
Yeah.
So since
Yep.
that time, I recognize even there I say the change maybe was in the rise because we
I
talk
read
about
that.
yeah
Thank you for mentioning that, because I read that and I saw something you wrote in 2018 that is the experience right now, and that's
yeah.
why I want people to go read it themselves, and have a feel of your state of mind at that point, the fearless young you, writing about things that people were thinking were fearful to say. And that's what I love about that chapter. And I'm connecting that to the chapter 7, so 5 and 7, where you is religion and spirituality, like politics. It's fair to say, you don't follow that doctrine of men or women in your central position, right? Keeping these topics to themselves because they are divisive, when it comes to politics and religion, just how people see it. So you got really beautiful pieces in that chapter, one of which actually is fitting for a time like this. The month of Ramadan, it's called. You collaborated with Dr. Nene Ba, to put it together. How did you come together, to put that together with Dr. Neneba? Like, how did you collaborate in
Actually,
a poem?
yeah. There are several ways of collaborating in poetry. But what I told, what we agreed was let's all write something about Ramadan. So once we all did that, then we combined them. But the other way that could be done was you write some stanzas about
Mhm.
Ramadan, I write, and we join them together. But we all wrote what we felt or what we feel about Ramadan, and then we
And just
join them together.
combine that.
Yes.
I highly recommend people just going to read that, because it's just beauty there. And the reason why I'm fast forwarding this, I want to go to chapter 6, which is very, very relevant. Here you're Dr. Bojang. We've read all these poems and all these chapters, and I'm sure somebody out there will anticipate where you go into the medical side of things. So here you are. You dedicated a chapter to the medical side. The very first poem says, "Poetry is medicine. Poetry in medicine is empathy enhanced, inner feelings expressed, the history completed, the treatment effected, and the healing achieved." Like I read that, it's very short, right? And I'm thinking about medicine. poetry, what were you thinking when you wrote this? More like, how do you find the art of poetry in medicine?
Wow. Actually, we are big into that. Actually, we've already published a book, medical poetry,
Hmm.
which actually was featured on BBC.
Mm.
So it's bigger than me. So we believe that poetry is healing. So I think that will be a whole another conversation to talk about medical poetry, because that's
A
what
whole
will I say?
segment.
That's yeah, a whole segment, because we've written a book published, which was an international collaboration. We
Okay.
had contributions from all over the world, and we are, in February, in January, we even had this Med Poetry event at Senegambia. A number of people attended. Yeah, so that will be a whole segment.
Yeah.
Yes. So
That's excellent. In this very chapter, let me read a poem to you. Okay.
yes.
The troubled heart. Behold, here he comes, the epitome of a perfect man, dressed in the most gentle of ways, walking tall, elegant, and confident. The sky, though, is filled with stars. Up in the heavens, he is the supernova. My appearance, he is your idol. When he speaks, he becomes your sorcerer. My profession, he is humanitarian. Though with the most merciful of hearts, when walking, he doesn't have sympathy. And though cruelty, he shows kindness. Through, sorry. On the days when he is at his prime, he is vibrant and full of compassion, walks with zest of youthful exuberance. To every patient's needs he would attend, which he always completes with a warm smile. On days when he would be down and out, to his surrounding he would become indifferent. He sits lackadaisically and gazes into space, or loiters around the hospital as if on purpose, emotionally charged beside himself, for he suffers from romantic heart disease. Who is this man?
Yeah, rheumatic heart disease. Um, well, this was not. How do I answer this question?
The question is, who is this man?
I may not know who the man is, but
Doctor, you walk tall, you're handsome and elegant, so I'm looking at these descriptions, and I started seeing you in this. So if this is not you, you tell us.
okay, yeah. Somebody wrote trying to describe who I am, and yeah,
They got it right. They got it right. But like the things here mentioned about like I feel like you went inside a little bit, or whoever described this went inside a little bit, from appearance outside to how this walking man is feeling inside. And that's what I like about the art in this. Was that on purpose? The description is not one-sided. It's holy.
yes, yes, yes.
I love it. I love it, Doc. For the sake of time, I'm gonna go to the very last chapter. I can't believe we're here. The very last chapter, it's a collaboration chapter, like poems from contributor poets. I'll give
Yes.
you the chance, to mention, these, four wonderful writers that you collaborated with, how that came about, and how they ended up in your publication.
Well, so two of four, three of these ones are upcoming poets. So Joy Buchanan is
Yes.
one of the
Hmm.
contributors. So Joy is, already an established published poet. Joy actually comes from UK.
Yeah.
So we have this poetry group we call Med Poet Team Med Poetry. So
Hmm.
that's what I was talking about, the medical poetry aspect.
Hmm.
So we have our page. So we are working with. Baba Saho, and then you have Jaju and Fatmata Kijera. So
Yes.
these are some of the contributors. So what we do with them is we actually help them, we help them we act as mentors to them. So this is a way of encouraging them. At least they can also become published poets. So this is how it started. So it is with this group who actually we came together to publish the mid poetry. So they are all part of the mid poetry. So the mid poetry with Joy and I actually were the editors of those books. So these other ones also contributed.
Fascinating collaboration. I like what you did there in bringing other people in, introducing them. I saw two of them are registered nurses, so meaning these are also people in the medical field. That from my very, very, very first question that was on purpose attacking. These are people that are going outside of what they're known as, to be expressive on the side of that art. So I love that you highlighted them in there. Doc, man, I'm looking at the clock. I can't believe where we are right now. The reason why I'm putting this in the end because, as far as I'm concerned, is the most irrelevant. But there's a reason why I want to ask this. Right? I'm gonna
Okay.
read. I'm gonna read something out of a poem, just a little bit out of a poem, and then I'll ask you a question. Um, we should not accept a nation where sickness like diabetes and high blood pressure becomes a death sentence. We should not accept mental health victims being labeled outcast. We should not call victims of epilepsy and other brain diseases February Guinea. Women should not spend 9 months of their pregnancy thinking about their fate on the day of labor. My people, some things need to change. We live in a modern world of accurate diagnosis and autopsy, where Wato Mojad or Alawato Lesita shouldn't be a doctor's last words. We live in a world where malaria should not be taking lives. We live in a world where Apollo should not leave anyone blind. We live in a world where cancer doesn't have a way anymore. Victims are given the chance to fight. We live in a world where basic health care for all is a reached target. We, my people, must be a part of this world.
Wow.
In 2012, the very first day you and I met, I read this poem, Karaba, in December 2012, and we must be a healthy Gambia. And this is how we met. You grabbed me and took me to a corner, and you made me sit down to rectify something, and you told me
Wow.
some of what I said was not accurate because Gambia was a little more.
Oh, oh, wow. I remember.
That's why I
Wow, wow,
waited. You told me
wow,
Gambia was a little more advanced than what I wrote, and
wow, wow, wow,
I
wow.
could not be happier to accept that I missed the mark in something positive for the rest of the nation. And I listened, I listened, I listened. You taught me. I sat there and I listened to you teach me. So this is why I want us to go to now. I can't believe a decade later you are in this position, heading
Wow.
cancer research. Where are we now as a nation, Doc?
Wow, wow, wow. I remember, yeah, I remember this.
You grabbed me. You're like, boy, sit here. I want to talk to you.
Well, like I said, that during that time, I think we are better than the way, because at that time, I think I felt that you really did not know what actually was happening on the
True. And
ground.
I accepted.
Yes,
Yes. Hmm.
yes. So I think now we are we are actually better off. We are far, far better than a lot of things have improved. Although I know people have a lot of misgivings when it comes to healthcare, but compared to what was happening, I mean, back then, this was 2012.
2012.
Yes, yes, I know we did not even have, how many doctors did we have? Now I was attending this program where the medical school actually has graduated 300 doctors, 800 nurses, if I can remember that. So that alone, when it comes to capacity in taking care of patients, I mean, we are better off compared to how we were, although we have a long way to go still. But in terms of capacity, in terms of uh, personnel, at least we improving. We have improved a lot.
I like
Now
the
we have
sound.
specialists. When it even come to equipment, we don't have the best of equipment. We don't have the adequate. But I mean, we are on our way, even though
I
we
like
have a long way to go
I
still.
like the sound of that. I like the sound
Yes.
of that. That's how we met, Doc. And this is good news.
Wow,
To see
wow,
that a
wow.
decade later, you are in a very pivotal position. We are talking about cancer here. I wrote about that. We're talking about the medical world and where it has gotten, but where Gambia is getting, professionals joining in, people are ready to do the work. This is good news for our nation. As we are on that very last second, I want to know, like, as a writer, somebody who have been published globally, you know, how would you encourage young people that are writing? It doesn't have to be a young person, somebody that is starting to write about that journey of being published, being expressive enough to be published, whether it's a book, whether it's a poem, whatever that they write. What would you advise as that publication
For
journey?
me, my advice, if you feel like writing, you want to write, just write. Don't be limited by, oh, maybe if I write, nobody will. The reading culture in the Gambia, a lot of things to be desired. But that should not stop you. Although, as a writer, when you write, the best feeling, what you want best is for people to read what you're writing. But start now. And with time, maybe when you read, you put it on your Facebook. Nobody, like when I started putting my poems on my Facebook page. I remember my friend I was with at that time. I was like, if I put my poems on my Facebook, if 4 people like it, I'm okay, because that will mean maybe 400 people must have read it, but at least these 4 people read it, and that's how I
With
start.
percentages, yeah,
So
I hear you.
yes, so if you want to write, forget about whether people will like my writing. I not no, just go
Just
and
right,
write.
just be
And you can
expressive.
also look for people like whether mentors or people who can guide you. But if you want to be a writer, you must have to read. You should read widely. Your vocabulary should be big, also be wide. That's the way it's supposed to be.
You should have a
So
deep
to be a good writer, you must be a great reader. That's the way.
That's a perfect end to this. To be a good writer, you have to be a reader. Basically, you have to put work into it. Thank you so much, Doc.
Yes.
We've covered this book. Tell people where to get it. I know I got it from Amazon. Is there more places that people can get it from? Because there's so many poems we've not touched on, obviously because of time. But where can people get this book?
Yes, the other thing about this book that's good is also translated into Indonesian. There's an Indonesian version of it. So, like for example, if you go to Indonesia, you can have it online on Shopee, on Amazon, sorry, on Lazada, now on Amazon, and at Timbuktu in the Gambia.
Got it.
So, because it was published when I was in Indonesia, so it was
Yes.
also translated. This is the Indonesian
Ah,
version, Anthology.
wow.
Yes. So not only English version. That's why the one you have, it is written on it, Poetry Anthology English edition, because there
Yes.
is an Indonesian edition
Yes.
too.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Doc, thank you for your time. This is as great as I thought it will be because of all the information you've given, all the gems that you've dropped. I expected nothing less. This is great, and I hope people get the book and have people reach you if they need more information on this. As we go on our way out here, how can people reach you? Where can they look for you apart from
Well,
showing up at your office?
Ministry of Health.
Okay.
Actually, our office is in Banjul, Claxton Street, number 1 Claxton Street. But when they come Ministry of Health, ask for me, they'll find me.
Look for Dr. Kebba S. Bojang. Thank you so much. Thank you, bro.
Thank you very much.
And good.